In this episode, we are full on spoilers for both the novel and the film.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I don't think we talked about who was saying that first tonight. So here I am.
We didn't. And I'm Bill, also known as Matt Stagger.
I'm Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to What the Adaptation. We've got another person with us tonight. Leigh-A, how you doing tonight?
Good. I'm very excited to be here to talk about the last two episodes of this miniseries.
I knew there was something I was forgetting, but sorry about that, guys. Welcome back. Tonight we're discussing the third night of, the last two episodes of the Colin Firth and Jennifer Ely adaptation from the BBC, I believe in 1995. Just really good show. What do you guys think of this?
Love it.
Loving it so much.
I'm enjoying it much better than the book. I can tell you that much.
Okay.
Okay. That's good at least. Well, we just dive right into it. What has changed from the source material and does that impact what stands out that has changed from the source material, and does that impact your enjoyment of the show?
I feel like usually we haven't had that much. I don't know if someone else wants. I have like a big one, but I don't know if anyone else has one.
Go ahead, do it.
No,
Okay.
hit us with the bigger one.
Because I feel like usually there's not that much to talk about, but I feel like episode 5 had like a much bigger one than most of the episodes, which is we see all these scenes of Darcy after he and Elizabeth separate and Lambton. And so that's a big change where we don't like directly see him. We just kind of hear later about like what he's been doing. So we know all of the stuff that they show happens, but we don't find out about it in real time in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to me, I have like a lot of thoughts about this. Like, I think it makes sense because if you didn't do that, you'd kind of have like Colin Firth in like the first, 10 minutes or something of the episode, and then he wouldn't be in it basically. So there's that consideration where they kind of had to, I think, do something with him. But then it raises like, it really changes the story in a way, and that like in the book we're with Elizabeth in sort of suspense about like what Darcy is thinking, like what she's making assumptions about what his reaction to the news about Lydia and Wickham is. And so by putting a lot of that in there, it takes a lot of that out, the surprise later of finding out what he's been doing. And I feel like they kind of tried to like layer in some little things to try to make it slightly ambiguous, like what his feelings were, kind of, which is very hard to do, I think. It's like the one scene in particular that I was like surprised they put in, not so much all the scenes where he's like in London or whatever, but they put in this little scene like right after Lambton where he's back at Pemberley, and it's almost like he hadn't made up his mind right away to go after Wickham, which we know he does in the book, and is like supposed to be how we're reading the scene. Like when he hears the news, is he's already like, okay, I've got to go. I'm already out the door. I got to go do this. So yeah, I have more to say about it, like, but I'll let people jump in too on like just, I don't know, other thoughts you had on any of those scenes, I guess.
I was going to say, on a similar vein, one of the changes we got was more additions, where we got a lot with Wickham and Lydia in town.
Yeah, that's
just
what I was going to say.
And her board and I'm sorry, that was the one.
No, it's fine. I don't mind.
But yeah, I think on an adaptation, and when you're seeing the characters on screen, I think it's important to keep some of the characters, in mind by seeing them, and leaving it all mysterious and unknown on screen I don't think works as well as it would in a book. Mysteries work better, I think, a lot of times on book page better.
Well, and they have the time with the miniseries format. They've got the time to show these extra scenes and put them in. Whereas when you're in the movie, even a long movie, you're like, what needs to be cut? Because we literally can't fit all this in. So I thought it was very interesting. And it really is the formatting of showing the Lydia and Wickham scenes, but also pulling in the Darcy scenes earlier is a very unique. It's nobody else has done it that way. So showing that first so that the viewers are seeing everything real time as opposed to the discovery later, like you get in the books. Because I had forgot that they did that. The time wise, I was expecting it. They've showed the flashes of scenes when people are writing the letters. It was fully when the aunt was writing the letters to like see Darcy doing all these gentlemanly behaviors, but you do get a little bit, but you've already seen it, but a lot of what he's done beforehand, like the searching, not just the active part of talking with the uncle and going to the wedding.
That's a good point. They were able to cut down the letter scene because they already showed a whole bunch of it, which is a thing they're constantly having to do is like, how do we work around these letters? Another thing they did to work around a letter in that episode was show Mr. Collins, like show up at the house instead of writing a letter, which I thought that was smart. I like they did that.
I love that scene so much, especially with Kitty in the background being like,
looking in the window.
Yeah, being all
so
peepy.
funny in that scene. I really like that too. Oh my
I
god.
love that.
Laughed so loud and abruptly. All my cats like
She was great. I was like, Kitty's finally getting a little moment to shine because she's mostly completely forgotten.
It is the forgotten sister.
Yeah, well, it's between her and Mary, but really both of them. Yeah, Kitty especially. I wanted to just add like on the Darcy stuff. So again, I feel like they added in a couple things to try to make it a little unclear. Like, has Darcy given up on Elizabeth? And so, like, in the scene after, like, she tells him, like, he does like turn his back for a lot of that scene. So you're not like looking at his face. And then there's that little scene they added in Pemberley, and then the very end of the episode where they just add like a shot of his face, like looking extremely grave. So they did those little things, I think, to try to like throw in maybe some confusion for, viewers of like, okay, how does he feel about Elizabeth now? Because she herself is thinking that he like is out there thinking ill of her. But the thing is, I feel like the early scenes in the episode make his love for her like so clear, like the most. And it's kind of like you kind of can't undo that. Like there's like, like they're giving each other this look across the room in Pemberley. He like torches Caroline Bingley.
Oh my god!
Like when she's like,
so much,
great. And then he's like so happy after that. Like after he just like shuts Caroline Bingley down, he's like so happy. He's like getting himself dressed and doing this whole thing, and like. Then he goes and he sees Elizabeth, and like before he knows what it's about and just sees that she's in distress, like he's so like attentive and his face is like so concerned for her. So the whole beginning of the episode is just like Darcy is like fully in love with Elizabeth, her rejecting him, her criticizing him didn't do anything to change his mind. So I guess we're supposed to just like then think, okay, well maybe finding out about Lydia and Wickham was enough to like shake him, but really, I mean, what? Yeah. Come on.
In the way Colin Firth plays it, I know we discussed it last week. It really shows that possible neurodivergent. Like he just doesn't express emotions very well. Yeah. So, the Colin Firth's portrayal of Darcy really has me like, that's my headcanon now. So, like, even when we see the next movie, I'm gonna be like, nope. Even if he's prim and proper and like. That stoic gentleman. I'm like neurodivergent. But that is exactly how, just like not understanding how to communicate how he feels, especially with the proprieties of society, and just literally like, okay, I gotta go because I'm gonna go handle this situation, and not communicating what he's doing at all, which leaves people who don't understand how neurodivergent people work, or that he is neurodivergent, that being like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah, actually, you're totally right. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm convinced that Jane Austen had a friend or family member who we would call neurodivergent today. That Mr. Darcy's mannerisms are based on someone she knows, because she's describing something that is more and more not just us, but I saw it when it came. The idea occurred to me when I was rewatching or rereading it, that he was neurodivergent. I've looked it up online, and there's a lot out there online. A lot of people are, and this is 200 years before the concept was even thought of.
Exactly. Yeah.
So she had to have based him on somebody, and I just don't see somebody being made up that just so epitomizes it in a way, in so many different ways.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think you're right, Leigh, about like him, like just when he gets this information about Wickham, his mind just like immediately attaches to, okay, I need to go take care of this immediately. So he stops like attending to anything else. And I think that fits perfectly with that scene. And even in the book, it's described that way. Like they talk about it later, and he's like, you know, the only reason I don't forget exactly how it was explained in the book, but like basically the only reason why I was like so serious at the inn at Lambton was because I was already like planning my trip to London, basically. So it just, that fits perfectly with that.
Yeah, I got to agree. Kind of his behavior at the beginning of the episode does sort of undercut the how does he really feel about Elizabeth, because you're like, okay, this dude is really into her. Totally really into her, and I don't see him changing his mind just because she's, you know, a little angry and rejectful for that moment.
He clearly didn't, you know, so it would just be like, does Wickham matter to him at that point, you know, in this calculation? But
well, and you could go both ways. Like it's mutually beneficial for him to take care of the situation because he might want to marry Lizzie, but also he does probably think it's the right thing to do. And well, I guess it's threefold. And he does feel like he created this problem by not outing Wickham after what he did to Georgiana. So,
right.
So he's responsible. He wants to marry Lizzie, and it's the right thing to do. And he can. He's got the means to do this. He's got the means to fix this problem.
Right. Yeah.
Just the further and further into this book you go, the more and more I respect and admire Mr. Darcy. You know.
Yeah.
They just you can't help it.
He frustrates me for about 85% of the novel. Okay. I thought Wheel of Time was my height of non-communication, but I have a new one. It is Mr. Darcy. It's just very frustrating for me. I have a neurodivergent son, and communicating with him is the same way. So maybe it hits a little too close to home for me, and I'm like, okay. I'm feeling that frustration on the page that I sometimes feel at home, and I don't like that reminder. So,
like I'm trying to escape life.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like, you know, we talked about this last time, but like the appreciation that I have for him as a character is that it's so rare to see a character who is like deeply criticized and like to respond to it in basically like the best possible way, like the way you would want someone to respond if you were offering any sort of like, you know, critical feedback to them. He kind of sets the bar for like being like, oh, like having a realization when someone like brings a fault to their attention, like having enough respect for the person who's bringing that to them to really fully attend to that and like immediately set about trying to self-improve, and then like admitting, like, not, I mean, he admits it to Elizabeth, he admits it to Bingley, like he just kind of, he's doing like a full like, like you were right, and I'm gonna fix it, and like that's a rare thing to see. So that's the respect that I have for him as a character.
I think it lends towards his hyperfixation, that when there is a problem for him to address, he absolutely zeroes in on it and hyperfixates on, I'm going to get this done, regardless of what it is, even if it's his own faults. And you got to admire somebody with that kind of focus.
That's a good point too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's not half-assing that, you know, like once he decides to do it, he's I'm all in on it. Yeah. That's good.
Yep. For sure.
Any other changes you want to bring up, anybody? I've got one, but I'm going to throw that in with teams.
The rest are pretty small and like.
Yeah, there's a couple other small ones.
There's a bunch of small ones.
I had a silly one that I liked. There's a little bit in the last episode where Lydia and Wickham are visiting Longbourn, and they just have Wickham like riding around on a horse, just like trying to it was so funny. I just love that little
I was
addition.
like, what is he doing?
It's just
I mean,
trying
he
to
impressed
impress
somebody.
all the sisters, I guess. It's just
Yeah,
hilarious.
I thought Mr. Bingley smiles a lot in this miniseries. That the actor did a lot of smiling. I don't think he ends up smiling anywhere near as much as the actress playing Lydia. And she's constantly got a grin on her face too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's very
It's
expressive.
got to be tiresome on set.
She's just like
All
a
right,
bundle of
move on.
energy. But yeah.
Yes,
well, I don't
she
know if you
is.
guys wanted. I mean, yeah, I don't know. The only
No,
other
go
thing
for
I
it.
like would mention of like some significance, I guess, is just like the very ending. Like I get what like they had to in the book. There's like a whole little like kind of I mean, it's not exactly a montage, but like, you know, a book version of that where it's like a quick summary of like all these things that happen with different characters and it, you know, kind of glimpsed into the future and whatnot, which they obviously can't really take the time to do that. But like the way they dealt with that in this just, you know, was to show the wedding, which is not in the book. Like there's really like no mention of nothing specific on the wedding, just it's mentioned very briefly that like Jane and Elizabeth got married on the same day. That's it. And like, but then to sort of like give like very lengthy bit with the priest or whoever, like just moralizing and then like cutting to different characters during
yes, I loved that. The shade of that those cuts was so funny.
It's kind of an interesting choice. So it's a little way to kind of do that of just like checking in on some of these characters and how they might be feeling about things or what might be going on with them. So, you know, it was kind of clever. Like I mean, like I could have done without the random talking by the priest, but that was the way they framed it. So like, you know, we got a little bit of that. It was kind of interesting.
I kind of liked leaving it off with the double wedding and just leave the rest to you. You know, I mean, you can write whatever story you want in your own mind from then on.
And several people have.
Many,
a number of people have.
I have not come across any fan fiction, so
I'm sure
there is.
I'm sure there is.
There's actually published works. The Murder at Pemberley or something like that, and it was made into a movie.
I randomly
that was my first experience with these characters was through that miniseries. It was a miniseries actually, I think like 3 or 4 nights.
That was something I randomly came across on TV at one point. Didn't know what it was, and I was just like, "What is this? Like, what was this Pemberley? Like, what is going on?" I had no context for it at all.
Yeah, that was based on a novel that was written as a sequel by somebody.
Yeah.
So I understand there's a lot of books based on or sequelizing from the original.
Well, we do get zombies.
Yes.
Yes, very soon.
And I didn't realize there were sequels to those books also.
Yeah.
The zombie books? Yes. There's like 3 of them, I think. 3 total.
Yeah. Which is cool.
All right, let's move on to favorite scenes and or bits of dialogue. I just want to bring up one of my favorite scenes, and it's one of the reasons why I have so much respect for Darcy. We were just talking about it. It was him apologizing to Bingley and admitting his mistake and everything. And just like, and Bingley was like, "Do you admit and he was getting ready to be like, do I have to fight my friend? And no, I admit I was wrong. I screwed you over." Then Bingley had nothing. Bingley was like, "Nobody does this." And it's just like it reminds me of what I see online. Very, very few people actually are willing to ever admit when they were wrong about something. Like I'm about to do. I meant to talk about this a couple weeks ago. I was going to mention that I have toe because I had at one point thought that this miniseries we're talking about came out over the course of 3 nights. And I said that on an episode. I described it as that. Turns out I was wrong. It came out 6 separate nights, 1 week apart. So just want to clear up my factual error that I gave because I hate leaving that out. But yeah, that was my scene. I really liked that scene with Bingley. It was one of the added changes that they made. So that was one scene I like. Who's got another?
Oh man.
I kind of already mentioned, we mentioned the call-in scene where he comes to give condolences and the kitty in the background.
That
So
was good.
it was just really broke up such a like emotional part of the movie. I thought it was really well done humor inserted to break the tension a little bit and make you laugh, especially with like Colin being a complete ass.
Colin, just, and I got to give props again to David Bamber. He's just so dang good in that part.
Yeah.
He's not always that greasy of a character.
Yeah.
So,
But he's so good at it.
He is. Yeah. I also really enjoy just, and they've done it throughout the miniseries, is just the tidbits you get of the daily lives. So the sisters talking while they're hanging up flowers to dry, or Kitty's playing with that, like, you know, the cup with ball and you catch it, or just like, just all of these little details that go into the scene. So it was not one scene in particular, but I thought that was one thing that the miniseries on a whole did really well.
That's something a really good director is going to make sure it happens, is that your characters aren't, all too often TV shows especially do this, the characters are just standing around talking. And yes, granted, we're sitting around talking, but that's a necessity for the way we're doing this. But, you know, that's boring. You know, a lot of shows, not everything gets away from that, where they're doing something, and that, you know, exactly like you're pointing out, that I like it when they do that. You know, give them something to do, or have the characters sit down. You know, why stand in the living room when you got chairs on a couch? You know, people don't stand around and talk in the living room. It's just unnatural.
Yeah. No, you're right. I noticed that too, like the hanging the flowers and all that stuff. And there was a little montage too to show some passage of time with like the sisters doing their different things. You know, like Mary playing the piano, Kitty working on a hat, like, you know, just different things that they're doing to show a little bit of time passing before Bingley comes back. So that was a nice touch. I have a couple ones. I mean, so I already kind of mentioned like really liking some of those like early Pemberley scenes, like that just kind of like Darcy like shutting up Miss Bingley, and you know, and the, you know, just that whole scene even before that, like, you know, when Elizabeth was there, was really good. A couple others that I feel like are worth mentioning. He liked how they handled, there was a scene between Elizabeth and her father that they put in to like kind of cover some stuff that like it wasn't done through conversation in the book. It was all like everything they said was like in the book, but it wasn't like a conversation. So they added this conversation where they're talking like about Lydia and Wickham, and like, you know, his whole, like what he'd intended for like the family and how it didn't work out and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, it was a nice scene. I think it was just like seeing his sort of taking in like his faults and like really kind of like sitting with that for a minute was it was a nice scene. And I feel like there was one other one I was going to mention, but maybe I'll think of it. Bill, if you want to jump in.
I honestly enjoyed the Lydia and Wickham scenes that were added. I mean, I actually enjoyed those. Just seeing those little sidebars we never got in the book to get a little glimpse into what was going on with them was really interesting and fascinating for me, because I didn't expect it. So I'm like, oh, okay. I really enjoyed those. So those are really standout moments for me.
It's always fun to see Wickham get annoyed.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny. She's oblivious to it.
Oh yeah. They're gonna be so miserable, like just so unhappy together. Because whenever he drops his like smarmy act and like you see like kind of who he is underneath, it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's not pretty.
That cut scene from the wedding where he's like responding to whatever Lydia's saying, and then he just like almost rolls his eyes and takes a big drink of wine. It's like, you have this for the rest of your life.
It's gonna be terrible.
Like, I think we know who's kicking the bucket first. The guy downing all the wine at once.
Mhm. Unless he kills her, but
Yeah.
Well,
that's
It's
a
grim.
tangent.
I
I don't think he
Grim.
has it in him. I don't think he has it in him. I'll be honest.
No.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, he's not. Yeah, no, maybe not.
All right, let's move on to the technical awards, as I like to think. Quality of the cinematography. I mean, not really. I mean, technically, it's a bit of a special effect, not done in a computer, I don't think. But I think that shot just looked too still in the movie. Like that. I don't know. Something didn't look right about that shot
Are
behind
you
you
talking
when I
the
saw it in the movie.
Darcy in
Pemberley
the
just
mirror shot, or
No, the shot behind Rebecca right now.
Oh,
the Pemberley?
I always thought it seemed like that was painted in like a matte painting to me. At least that's how it looked when I watched it.
The water was moving,
it's
dude.
a real location.
Well,
The water was
what I'm
moving.
saying is a matte painting behind the water.
I get you, but
I mean, the building
Yeah.
is a real location that they
Is it?
filmed.
Okay.
Yeah, they filmed on location.
All right. Then my eyes are wonkier than I thought they were. That's fine. I was on. But yeah, music is what I really was noticing throughout the entire 6 episodes. A lot of really good music. You know, I love that opening theme. Personally, you know, that piano piece over the opening credits. I really like that. And I always appreciate the use of diegetic music. You know, where the music's in the scene, it's part of the scene and the ambience that the characters are experiencing. I always like music when it's that in a way.
And they allow the characters to play the music incorrectly. You can hear those wrong notes. You're just like, oh, that one's painful. That one was painful.
Please stop playing the piano, please. Please.
Does anyone know though if because I forgot to look this up, if Jennifer Ely was like really singing, because whoever was singing has a really lovely voice.
That too. I didn't. I meant
that I've been wondering.
Yeah. It sounded nice though. The voice was nice. Like the piano maybe was not like technically perfect or whatever on purpose, but like the singing voice was very nice.
If that's her singing voice, I'll be impressed because that was
because she did
singing.
look like she was singing. Like
yeah,
that was really good lip syncing. If she did not,
if it wasn't, it was good.
But yeah, the composer, I just had it here.
So it says in BBC's 1995 Pride and Prejudice, Jennifer Ely as Lizzie sings the last verse in the English of Voice Sapate from The Marriage of Figaro.
Okay.
Wild. Wait, hold on. Oh, it does say she did play it.
She did sing it.
Tune. Yes, she did sing it.
Yeah,
for her.
Yeah, I just looked it up. She sang it herself.
She's okay, talented then. Well done. That was really nice.
And it did look like Mary was also actually playing the piano in her scene. So
yeah. And
I
wonder for her if they made her like purposely sing in an off way, because like that seems like something that like the actress would do on purpose because it fits for the character.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
And by the way,
she's almost as bad as me.
I think Mary's neurodivergent too, but
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
Like probably more on the autistic scale than just neurodivergent.
Yeah, I think so.
Like very much more neurospicy than Mr. Darcy.
Yep. Yeah. Was there anything else you were saying about the music, Glenn, or I wasn't sure?
No, I thought I had the composer's name. I think it's Carl Davis, but I can't remember for sure, and I can't find where I had that earlier. I had that page up.
Carl Davis, yes.
Carl Davis. Okay, thank you for double checking.
Yep. For me, it was costumes.
Costumes for sure.
The costumes were just outstanding.
Yeah, they really are excellent.
Every scene.
So I have a favorite costume choice, which is there's 2 scenes where we have Lizzie and Georgiana together, and in both of the scenes they're dressed so close to each other, like tying them together as sisters. So that was a very nice choice on the costume department.
That was exactly the notes that I put down. I actually even had pictures that I was going to try to share, but I couldn't get it to work. of the two shots.
Yeah.
And I knew somebody was going to point that out too.
Yeah,
But you beat me to
because it was obviously they did it on purpose, like very clear. And I had noticed one of their outfits matching when I'd watched it before, but this time I noticed in the second scene their outfits are very similar as well, which I hadn't paid as much attention to. But it was
blue
nice.
on blue top, light blue top,
Like
the
same
dress, and then white
top. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the second time they're both wearing off-white dresses.
Yep, very similar.
And they've been making those same choices with Lizzie and Jane, like always wearing very similar types of, even down to like almost different styles of the same fabric. So like to tie in Georgiana that way was very sweet.
Really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
So there is one practical effect that I thought was just so 90s was the Mr. Darcy in the mirror that she's like looks in and he comes in and then he walks away and I started like that was just so funny. Like the one practical effect that they did.
Yeah. That is funny. Yeah.
They also had a good habit of framing shots really well. I've talked about it before, and they even highlight a shot where Lizzie is remembering back to a conversation with Wickham at the party, and he said something about there's only one woman here that has and he turns, and right behind him is Lydia turning around herself, and it's just the way they framed it. They did that a few times throughout, shots similar to that. And I always like that.
Bringing things kind of back around. And I kind of took that as like, this must be just like Lizzie, like thinking back to that moment and kind of like wondering like, oh, did he mean that? Like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I don't know if that's what they intended or not, but that's kind of how I took it. But
I can see that.
Interpreted it. Yeah.
I also liked in like the final episode, they did kind of make a point of like, I assume like waiting some time to film in a different season because there were scenes that were very clearly like autumn, whereas things generally been looking more summer-like before. I feel like they probably filmed most of this in the summer and then waited to film some scenes in autumn, which was nice. Like I felt like that like added somewhat to the passage of time and changed the atmosphere a little bit, and it was worth doing that, I think.
Yeah, well, and the whole miniseries like did cover multiple seasons. So like they hit summer 2 times, they hit autumn twice, they hit winter twice. So I wonder if they just, obviously don't record in chronological order and just do like,
I
let's film the wedding scene.
I don't
know how they went about filming
like,
back in the 90s.
Did they? When in the earlier parts of the miniseries where it was autumn, like chronologically in the story, did it look like it? Because I don't remember there being scenes where it was like
don't remember
autumn as there was in this last episode.
I feel like they were outside because the Bingleys and party left, and then a lot is late summer, early autumn. And then that's when Jane went to London and through the Christmas season. So I think there was a lot of inside scenes.
And also
fast forward through.
Fast forward. I think we just kind of fast forward through a lot of the late fall, winter, we just kind of skipped over it and like just jumped to spring. So maybe I'm forgetting something, but if I had to guess, I would think they filmed almost everything during like spring, summer season. Yeah. And just kind of made it look like that. Probably. And then just the stuff at the end they probably filmed in the autumn.
Yeah.
But
I know that opening scene felt very summer, racing the horses to the ground.
It did.
It felt very summer.
And there was a lot of like in the outside scenes with like Lizzie where she's like walking to another field or whatever, like that seemed pretty summer. Like maybe it was supposed to be fall, but like early fall or something. Like it wasn't obviously like late fall or anything like that.
Well, and you can film late winter to get an autumn feel. So or just wear less clothes even though it's winter. And
yeah.
I hope the breath doesn't show up when they talk.
Anything else on scenes? And we've done the scenes and the technical stuff. Do you guys want to move on to best actors?
Move on.
Sure.
All right. I'll let Bill start off. Who would you get?
Oh, honestly, Jennifer,
Ely.
Ely. Yeah, I wanted to say Ellie. Ely, absolutely, as Elizabeth, probably my favorite out of the entire cast. I mean, don't get me wrong, Colin Firth is great as Darcy, and I think the two sort of play off each other so brilliantly. But she was just absolutely perfect. I mean,
Yeah,
she
she was
absolutely
amazing.
100% nailed the character in every
Mhm.
aspect. So that's my number one.
I can't argue with you on that.
Mhm.
Jennifer Ely is definitely up there. She's who I've got for my number two. My number three, because I always like to throw three in. I want to give props to Benjamin Whitrow, who played
He's so
Mr.
good.
Bennett. He is just. I think this is my favorite Mr. Bennett, even over Mr. Bennett in the book.
I think he's my
Even over
favorite Mr.
Mr.
Bennett too.
He's just really good.
Mhm.
But
I'm
the
holding
top-notch award for me is going right here, Colin Firth. I
Mm.
just he shows
So
so
good.
much, holding his face perfectly still, not just you could see it in his eyes and at the corners of his mouth, everything that's going through his head, and it's just like as he watches her, as they're staring at each other across the room, and as he watches her perform, like in this shot here, it just he's so good at that stare down, like
That
I don't even
smolder.
want to call it stare down. Yeah, smolder. It's better than Pattinson is supposed. I can't imagine Pattinson in Twilight can be any better at it than what he was.
We were just talking
I
about him
can't
last week
imagine
too.
that.
Why do we keep talking about Pattinson?
I don't know. He's got the
Because
hair.
I actually think he would be good in the part. If you were to make this right now.
No, don't you dare. Don't you dare. No.
Hang on, my little spider monkey.
Please don't torture us with that.
I don't know. I mean, to be fair to him, I feel like I haven't seen him in like things where he has like decent material to work with, right? So,
The Batman.
but I haven't seen it though. I don't know if it's
No,
good. I have no
I
idea.
don't watch it.
Okay,
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
I have thoughts.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I definitely agree that Jennifer and Colin took it away, and I said, I guess my number three would be the actress who played Jane,
Mhm.
mostly because, especially in these last two episodes, the way she portrays Jane, I was like, oh, this is why she keeps getting called a silly girl, and like all the derogatory things that the father keeps, because she doesn't just play like a kind, nice person who's just like trying
Susanna Harker, yes.
thank you, trying to gloss over like just like being very forgiving of everybody, as Lizzie is reading one of the the letter from the uncle about having found Lydia and asking like, here's what we need to do to get them married. And she's just like, I can't remember exactly what she says, but she's like, oh, but and she's just so flippant about it. And I was like, that's the silly girl. Okay, now I get why she keeps getting called a silly girl and Lizzie's the only smart one. All right, cool. Because you do see her as like, I think because everybody wants to forgive her because she is so nice and is so kind, but she is just kind of like airheaded about in her way of like deliberately choosing not to see people's faults. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's willful blindness. Yeah.
Willful blindness, and it's very silly. Well, and I feel like the way that the actress plays it is even like takes it a step beyond willful blindness. Just like, ha ha ha. Like she doesn't get it. Like she is just so, she really truly believes it. And it's like almost ditzy in the way that she like really trusts people to be good. It's like, that makes sense. I get it now. So
I think I know exactly the line you're talking about. She's like, it's as I hoped, they are married. And then he immediately says they're not married. Like it's just that like bump like line right there. But yes, I see.
Yeah, she has a couple of ones right in there, and it's just like, oh girl, come on. Like just stop with being so dumb about this entire situation.
Hey, Glenn, are you sure you don't want to go with Allison Steadman as Mrs. Bennett?
Yeah.
She probably deserves it because I am really glad I don't have to watch her as Mrs. Bennett anymore.
I wonder if
And I've only
lost her
got a
voice
little
doing
bit more
that.
Mrs. Bennett left to deal with, and then I'm done with Mrs. Bennett forever.
Yeah. I mean,
So
she's allowed to be that silly. The character is that silly, but yeah, it's a lot.
I forgot while we were talking costumes that her nightgown and how ridiculous and frilly and lacy it is. It just like that costume choice to
She looked like a doily.
How insanely ridiculous she is.
She must have been hot as hell under that outfit.
Can't even imagine, but like that,
especially
and then
with
like
all
the
those
lace,
lights.
just like oh my
That's
god.
what I picture the big bad wolf wearing after he eats grandma.
Yeah.
That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
I will add on for like Susanna Harker these episodes too, because what I notice about her portrayal of Jane is that she nails the aspect of Jane where in the book it's commented on that like both like Darcy doesn't think she's really in love with Bingley, and Charlotte Lucas comments on how like he'd never know that like or that she was really interested in him, that like so there's a sort of like sedateness to her on the surface. And like underneath there's like real like warmth and feeling there, but she's very like sedate and easy on top, like very unruffled. And I think she really gets that aspect of the character very well as an actress.
Absolutely.
And then after the scene where like she's telling Lizzie that she's engaged to him, like all the feelings come bubbling out and she's so happy and like really like displaying that feeling that she has been holding in. She's really trying to like keep all her feelings in. And that was a really lovely scene where it comes bubbling out. And so I think she did a really nice job. And I think I agree with what you said, Leah, too. Like, it's not that she's stupid at all, because she's not supposed to be, right? She's supposed to be sensible, but she has this real choice of looking on the world and really looking for the good and just not seeing the bad. Like she's choosing not to see the bad. She's choosing to really only see the good. And yeah, so it can be silly in some of these situations where like there's not really any good to see there, so it does come across as silly.
It does come across as naivete sometimes, where you're like, does she just not get it? Or...
Yeah, but it's so interesting how Lizzie like really, she loves her sister so much. Like this is a fault that like in another person who was not as dear to her, she might poke fun at this kind of fault, because it is a fault in a way, but it's kind of lovely fault, like she's a very pleasant, lovely person. And Lizzie just like loves and appreciates that about her, and just accepts that that's her fault, and it's a nice aspect to their sisterly relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, should we move on?
Sure.
Well, here's the big one. Well, sometimes on the show it usually can be the big category. Let's see what it is tonight. Themes in the episodes that we watched compared to the books.
Owning your mistakes. Because everybody sort of has that moment where they go, oh, I was completely wrong about that thing, and they grasp it and they acknowledge it and they correct it. So mostly.
Not some
several people do.
It's a huge theme, though.
The people we care about anyway. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
There's some that I would like to have seen apologize for being wrong, like Catherine de Bourgh and Caroline Bingley.
Never gonna happen.
Again, people we care about.
Right.
Just for the come up and so on to see.
Actually, on that, I wanted to mention something I really like that the adaptations do, and they do it for time, like it's in this one and others too, but it adds in a way to this theme a little bit, which is Bingley in this adaptation, as well as another, we'll get to it. As soon as he like hears from Darcy, like that, like Jane really does love him, she was in London, all this stuff, he just like bolts over there and like proposes to her as soon as he can.
Hurry up, man, hurry up.
Yeah, which is not the way it is in the book. Like he drags it out. He's like, doing a whole courting bit, like for many,
weeks,
scenes.
yeah,
Moons.
And weeks, yeah. So I kind of like that, because in a way that's like acknowledging like, oh, I should have proposed to you before. Like I messed up, and by like just doing it like as soon as he can, like not waiting till a decent hour when people will be dressed, just like bolting his ass over there and like, proposing immediately. It's a way of acknowledging that. So I think it does add to that theme a bit too. I like it.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think resolution is a big theme.
Yeah.
So, a lot of problems get resolved, a lot of relationships get resolved. But like just things that you're hoping happen, like they all come together. So the father acknowledges that he was wrong, so he's like resolving some of those issues. You also hear him like talking about like, but then he also goes, oh, but tomorrow I'll probably go back to being myself. So I don't know if that's technically resolving, but he's at least acknowledging it.
Yeah. They can't all be Mr. Darcy,
No, they
it's
can't,
like
they can't all be.
No.
they can't all be in that way. Yeah.
But
Can't all be
to
a
Matt
good-
Stagger's point, like he was like admitting fault and like,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, but there was just like a lot of resolution, which you would expect at the end of a book or a miniseries. But
Right.
it was nice. It's good to see it all come together so nicely and so pleasantly.
I mean, other than the obvious, that people have made a joke of the past 2 weeks of Pride and Prejudice, the one that really had stood out to me, Bill went with owning your mistakes, admitting you're wrong, and righting your wrongs, or righting wrongs where you can. But it's especially a present in Darcy's storyline and with Lizzie's storyline, and I can't really tell you which of those two characters I like their storyline better, but
they're inseparable. You need both.
I mean, yeah, they're so intertwined that you can't really.
That's how well.
I can't figure out who I like better as a character. I should say. I have a really hard time because Lizzie, for the longest time, was the first couple of times I read the books was my favorite character, but watching this show, he's my favorite character. On the show at least, he's my favorite character.
I think there's a real genius to how well these two characters are matched in terms of like the ways they challenge each other, the ways they complement each other. I mean, that's the fundamentals of this story, and ultimately like why it works is like their two dispositions and how they play off each other. I mean, it's really perfect.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to go on to a different theme.
Is Lizzie Bennet supposed to be? Is that Jane Austen's stand? Is she supposed to be a lot like Jane Austen was? Do we know?
She's supposed to be the closest to Jane Austen, hypothetically,
of all of her characters, or at least in the book. Okay. I wondered that.
That's good.
Although, so again, I don't know if I'm just misremembering. I do want to go listen to Kate Redding has narrated Jane Austen's letters. And I keep meaning to go listen to it. Just life is crazy and busy, and I really want to pay attention to it. So I don't feel like I want to like make sure I'm in a place where I can listen and focus and really, and then I'll probably want to do a complete reread of all her books. So I just need a little bit of time. But yeah, so I'll keep y'all posted. I'll make sure to comment here. Once I see what
coming soon, Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah, right. So the other big theme for me, and I totally agree that like, acknowledging faults, correcting them, writing, mistakes is one of the hugest themes. The other one that I think is really big, and it comes into play in the scene between Elizabeth and Mr. Bennet after she's accepted Darcy's proposal. So they're talking about, Darcy, and Mr. Bennet is really warning her against marrying him, believing that like she doesn't like him, and doesn't have any sense of like the regard that she's come to have for his character. And he's afraid that she's going to make a mistake like he did and marry someone that is really unsuitable for him, right? Like the match between Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, as is clearly laid out in the book, is extremely unsuitable. Like they are mismatched in every way, and there's no way that they could be happy together. And the book, really points out that a lot of the problem too is that like Mr. Bennet has allowed his, like he copes with it by just laughing at his wife. But by doing that, he's basically laughing at his children's mother in front of them and letting them also see that she is ridiculous. And not like, I don't know, maybe would be a hopeless case to try to like, get some character growth out of her. Maybe that's not going to happen. I don't know. But anyway, this is what he chooses to do. And it's like explored as a fault. And so I think that's, they brought this in, and that's a big place where it's explored in the book as well, of like, where he's like, basically like, don't make the mistake I did. Like, don't marry someone that you don't truly esteem and respect. And so she has to like convince him that she truly does. And I think it ties into what I was just saying about like how well matched these two characters are. And that like, that's like what you see is that Darcy has from the beginning or almost from the very beginning has like real respect for Elizabeth, like really has a high regard for her opinion. Absolutely. And she makes the wrong assumptions about him and then just keeps on going down that path for a while, but to her credit is able to shift her opinion with new information and come to see him and really value him. And so it's that importance of having like their complementary and contrasting natures, while even with the differences they have, the true respect for each other, that is what makes the strongest pairing. And I think that's what this whole thing is exploring. And like it was that last piece of it was her convincing her father that is what she had found, and that she wasn't repeating the mistakes of her parents.
Adding on to that, I'd say communication is the key. I think that's a big theme, because everything is resolved because there is clear communication for the first time, and everything gets resolved within a matter of like 15 minutes. You're like, oh, okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like, when they finally like get some stuff out, like, and it's really all hinges on Darcy's letter, right? He shares a whole bunch of information, and and Elizabeth is actually not immediately, but fairly quickly able to be like, oh, okay, I was wrong. So yeah.
Well,
like, I assumed instead of asking.
Well, and there's communication in a lot of other places. So like they're after Lydia does her thing, there's a lot of active communication.
Yeah.
Lydia accidentally communicating that Darcy's there, that allows Lizzie to have communication with her aunt, who does not hide a single thing. Like, to her credit, she's like, okay, now that you know, may as well tell you everything.
Not so sure it was an accident, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh no, Lydia is the little brat.
Yeah.
So, like, she's totally bragging about like, know that Darcy.
Right. Just like she's bragging about having Wickham, and oh, didn't you like him at one time or something?
Oh,
like,
you're like, no, one did.
But yeah,
waiting for one of her sisters to walk up and smack her. One of her sisters to do it.
Oh, when she gets out of the carriage and like tells Jane, no, I get to go into the house first. And I was like, girl, if you were my sister, I would straight up smack you in the face.
But like, Jane Bennet would never.
Jane Bennet would never. Like, thank God she didn't say that to Lizzie, because Lizzie would probably
might have.
Yeah.
Oh man. Kitty would have. But
I was going to say Kitty would definitely do it, especially after everything.
And, like, she wouldn't have.
Well, that too. Yeah, she would
have like thrown more of a temper tantrum.
But no, you
brought up
something I wanted to say. Oh, go ahead, and I'll come back to it.
There's a lot more Kitty in this miniseries than there is in the book.
Yeah.
A lot more Kitty.
well, you got to do something when she's on screen. Like you know, you got to give her
Yeah.
something. So the thing that I forgot to say earlier that you just reminded me of, Leah, is the scene where like Elizabeth has just found out about Wickham and Lydia. She's reading the letter, and like Darcy just comes in on her, and she says like, "Oh, this can't be concealed from anyone," kind of making an excuse like for why she's just like blurting it all out to Darcy. But really, I think that's a statement that's not really true, and she knows it, because even after she tells him, she's like, "But like, don't tell anyone." And
she
then
says
like
conceal it as long as you can.
Right, exactly. Conceal it as long as you can. So she knows that there is some amount of secrecy that can be kept, at least for a period of time. So, and she isn't prepared to just like blurt this out everywhere she goes. So my point there is just that if it had been someone else besides Darcy who had come in on her in that moment, she would not have blurted it all out.
Yeah, like if Bingley had walked in for whatever reason, she probably would not have said anything to Bingley because she didn't have that trust.
I don't believe she would.
Yeah.
So I think that shows, again, the like esteem and regard she's already come to have for him at that time, that she trusts him with this. She doesn't give it a second thought. She already knows he's not going to say anything, just like he trusted her with the secret about his sister. Like she's showing that same kind of trust and kind now, and that is a key thing. And it's not as just, she kind of makes it sound like it's not anything special, but it really is.
Yes, it absolutely.
I don't think she would have shared with him if he hadn't shared that beforehand.
I
think that
100%.
There's no way she would have.
No. But because of that, and because she's then also seen the change he's undergone, like those two things combined has radically changed her opinion of him.
Absolutely.
So, moving on to rating of the season of the BBC's miniseries of Pride and Prejudice, or as I typed twice today, I don't know why, Crime and Punishment. I don't know what my brain was doing.
I'm like, wait, I gotta read
Twice
Crime and Punishment now?
It's Thing and Thing.
I don't know what my brain was doing.
Because even from the same nationality of authors.
No, I know, that's the worst part. Not even
it's just noun and noun. There's no other. That's it.
It's just twice I typed it. My fingers did their own thing. I didn't even realize it until Bill pointed it out.
Pointed out. I was like, wait, I got to read that? What?
Talk about another book that I'm just like, I might have to suffer through and reread.
Having read this book, how would you rate the TV show as an adaptation?
Out of what's our scale again?
Yeah, what's the scale?
1 to 10. 1 to 10. I'm gonna say a good 9. I think it's 90. It's got a good 90% accuracy. It's counting stuff that's left out and counting stuff that's added in. I don't think it left out anything important, and it didn't add anything that ruined it. So
I really don't
give it a
think they actually left
9.5.
anything out. Yeah, I agree with 9.5.
Nice,
yeah, I mean it's as close to a 10 as you're gonna get, really. At least a 9.5.
Well, and not to be completely repetitive, but the mini-series format really did lend to adding in a whole bunch of contextual scenes that gave them the time to really immerse yourself in that Regency era. And so it wasn't just them sitting in the drawing room or taking a turn around the garden, which is really what they do in the book a lot. Like they're sitting and talking. They're sitting, writing letters,
reading letters, writing letters, letters.
Taking a turn around the garden, the stereotypical things. So the format really lent itself to all of these extra little tidbits, which I think added a lot of character to a script that we're all very familiar with, or at least Rebecca and I. Yeah, because we've watched all the adaptations and we've heard the script 100 times and we've read the book, and like we can basically be like, nope, that one line, they added that one line and they took out that one line. I thought
ruined the entire movie.
Yeah.
Completely.
They dropped that one line, ruined the entire movie.
Yeah. Well, in the creative choices about how to, not how to deal with the fact that the letters are one of the main forms of forwarding the narrative, which doesn't make for good, like TV.
Except they did it right on the. I think they did letters perfectly well. This is how you.
They did great.
This is one of those ways where voiceover works and voiceover is good. Is having the writer of a letter read it out loud as your character's reading it,
or even the choice to change one letter to an in-person visit.
Doing like a scene or a flashback to
when
sort of revisit it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a brilliant way of handling instead of letter, because there were a lot.
There are a lot.
Yeah.
And you're right, Glenn.
Epistolary format.
Go ahead.
If the epistolary format drives you nuts, don't read Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's
black
all it is.
cylinders.
It doesn't drive me nuts.
I think
stuff. It can be interesting. It's just like it's hard to adapt, but like
adapting is the part.
It was a challenge they had, but they handled it very well. And I agree with you that while narration is often can be weird because they don't always bother to explain like why is there narration? Like what is the context of this narration? Where is it coming from? Like who's talking to whom here? But like in this case, you totally get away with that because it's very clear like where the narration is coming from. So they absolutely can use that and dramatize some of the things that are in the letter, change some of them. Like, so they handled it very well. And that was a tough thing. Plus the other thing that's in the book a lot is just this omniscient narrator that's just commenting on stuff. It's not even like Lizzie thinking of stuff necessarily. Like it's not even framed that way in the story because you're not deep in Lizzie's perspective in the way it's written.
Right.
You're pretty zoomed out. So some of that stuff they could have just cut it, but some of it when they wanted to, they found ways to put it in. They turned it into dialogue and things like that. So they did a really, really nice job with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And being as partial as if you had never read the book, how would you rate this miniseries as if you had never read the book? Blame Max. He's the one who wrote these questions.
I mean,
that's hard.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
I think it was for all the same reasons. It was so enjoyable. So like getting to see the daily life. The script was good. The acting was amazing. So it's definitely on a rewatch list for a reason. So it's not like, yes, I do love the book. I really enjoy the book, but I think it is a really well produced miniseries.
I watched this before I ever read the book. So I can say I definitely I'd say probably a 9.5. I really liked the show a lot before I had read the book. Reading the book, I see a little bit of changes, but I mean, it knocked the score down a little bit, but not to a low score by any means. It's still a pretty high score, so having read the book did detract just the tiniest little bit, half a point from my enjoyment of the miniseries.
I feel like it kind of evens out. I mean, like, as I'm watching it, having read the book, like, yeah, I noticed that maybe I had some favorite little lines or something in the book that didn't make it in. On the other hand, I also notice like the things that are added, that there are things that I think are even enhanced in this compared to the book. And so, I wouldn't notice any of those things if I hadn't read it, right? Like but I still think I would enjoy it for all those reasons, like pretty much equally well. And it's still, like I said, maybe like, pretty easily like a 9.5, like very, very well done, really well acted. Like just, there's so many aspects of it that just work. And when I think about the things that like the themes that are so important to me in the book, it's in there. It's like the things that I come back to in the book are also in this for sure.
Definitely. Bill, you gave your last score?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a 9.5. I mean, it's
both. Okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed it immensely more than the book. The letter setup for me was a bit trudging at sometimes that I had to sort of force myself through. And I think they handled it perfectly. So for me, it was an improvement. So yeah, I mean, if I never read the book, I think it would still be just as enjoyable as I found it. So.
All right. Anybody have any last comments? Anything they want to bring up?
Zombies. We need zombies.
There's
They're
one
coming
thing
soon.
missing. It's just zombies. Yeah.
There you go.
They are coming soon. In 2 weeks, or I believe 2 weeks, we will be starting Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. We're going to be talking about the book and the movie. But before then, we still have the 2005 movie with Keira Knightley and how do you pronounce his last name? Matthew
McFadden, I believe.
McFadden, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Beth would know. Beth knows.
I'm
looking
pretty
forward to
sure it's
trying that one out.
McFadden. I will not swear to it like Ely because I didn't look it up to double check, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Beth will correct.
I know. I know. I like his acting because he was on most of Spooks, which if you ever have a chance to watch the British show Spooks, it'll be on TV here as the MI5. Excellent show.
It's on
really
Amazon as Spooks.
As Spooks? Okay,
as
good.
Spooks, yes.
That's what it should be. So thank you guys at home for watching. Please leave us a like, a subscribe, leave some comments, and come back soon. And don't forget to be awesome.
See you.